Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news, we shall discuss the important articles related to economy from the Hindu newspaper. Sri Lanka announces $51 billion debt default to combat the crisis. We have been discussing through various articles in the news about how the Sri Lanka debt crisis is happening, what are the reasons for the foreign exchange crisis, and how it is impacting the food inflation and also causing political unrest in Sri Lanka. Until now, Sri Lanka had a proper track record of paying back the debts, but now it has no choice but to go default on the debt. Previously, the central bank had also increased the interest rates by almost 7%, so that because of the tightening monetary policy, the inflation would come into control. But now, the Sri Lankan government, which had borrowed mainly by issuing the sovereign government bonds through the foreign market borrowings, it is going to default that, and it is going to affect the credit ratings of the Sri Lankan government. Even before it has gone to IMF for bailout package, it has gone for hard default, which will again impact the conditionalities of IMF package, and IMF would impose stricter conditions on Sri Lanka now. Analysts say that this is a better scenario where the Sri Lankan government is going for hard default, that is, it is defaulting for every borrower than going selectively. For example, if it would have defaulted on a coupon bond payment in the coming month or the coming few months, then it would have affected certain people of the borrowers, certain class of the borrowers, and those type of borrowers would not invest in Sri Lanka again, and all the creditors who are looking all over the world would be aversive to invest in Sri Lanka. Now, because they are going for hard default, that is, they are not paying anybody and they are defaulting almost all the borrowers and not selectively defaulting, it would give out a message that they are doing it because of the necessity. And IMF would put very strict conditionalities on Sri Lanka. For example, increase in the tax hikes, because reduction in tax rate was one of the main problems why the Sri Lankan inflation rates and the default started. And it would also make the Sri Lankan public sector undertakings into private sector undertakings. Previously, Sri Lanka had gone through a similar problem in 1977-78. At that time also it went to the IMF, and IMF under the structural adjustment program made it liberalize the economy. So when the Indian economy was liberalized in 1991 because of the balance of payment crisis, much before in 1977 and 78 itself, Sri Lanka liberalized its economy under the conditionalities of IMF. That made it first economy in the South Asia to open up its economy to the global market. Retail inflation here 7% as food prices pinch. We have been reading about how the impact of global crude prices, Russia-Ukraine conflict, and how it would impact on the commodity prices. Now, because of the global crude prices, the input cost for all the manufacturers would increase. That we have been discussing constantly in the news hour. Now, the article also tells the same. The manufacturers are now passing on the prices to the retailers. The ripple effects of the prices are taking place. The transportation and logistic cost effect are taking place on the retail prices. That is why the food inflation is increasing. And compared to the urban inflation, the rural inflation is higher. And because the food inflation is increasing, the major people who get affected is the poor, because out of the total income of the poor, a major chunk would be the expenditure on food. So if food prices are increasing, as compared to the rich people, the poor people will get affected more. So this can be a question in prelims. In the text and context, there is an explainer article about the new initiative of RBI, the cardless cash withdrawal from the ATMs. Recently, RBI announced that using the UPI in the future, we can withdraw cash from the ATMs instead of debit cards. And how does this system work? A person who wants to withdraw cash through the UPI mechanism by using the mobile phone and the ATM without the debit card, he has to go to the ATM. There he has to select the option for UPI withdrawal. Then a barcode scanner would be shown on the ATM machine, on the screen of the ATM machine. The person would scan the barcode scanner from this UPI app from his mobile, and he would input the password and authenticate the transaction. That way the UPI transaction and cash withdrawal will take place. And what is the benefit of this technology? The RBI governor says that cardless cash transaction withdrawals using the UPI will increase the security of the cash withdrawal transactions, because currently when it comes to the debit cards, there is the problem of card skimming and card cloning. And currently only customers of few banks like the HDFC, SBI and other banks, and using the certain apps built by those banks, people are able to withdraw. And now because of RBI's move, almost all the ATMs, you can withdraw from any ATM and all the ATMs using this facility. We just discussed about the card skimming and card cloning. What is card skimming? Skimmer is a device which will steal the card data. So this device will be installed in isolated ATMs or installed at a place which is not seen to the naked eye. So when the customer puts in the debit card and when it takes out, the skimmer which is secretly installed, it will capture all the data from the magnetic strip of the card and it will store it into the skimmer. Later, all the information stolen would be fed into a dummy card, that is known as cloning. And using that dummy card, the people will steal the amount from the bank account of the person. So that is how skimming and cloning would work. Even at the point of sale machines, these skimmers and cloners are sometimes used, and especially when the customer is not able to see where the person is swiping the card. That's why if you have observed, previously we had magnetic strip cards on the debit cards, and all the cards were replaced with the card chip card, wherein the SIM card type of chip was installed on the debit card. But even this cashless card withdrawal feature, that also has some limitations. What are the limitations? To access this feature would be cumbersome, because first you have to go to the ATM, select the different option there, then you have to open the bank account, then you have to scan the UPI number, then you have to put in the password of the UPI. And what if that's a place where the internet connectivity is not proper? Earlier the ATM machines used to have internet connectivity, that will be taken care by the ATM service provider. Now the customer also has to have proper internet connectivity. This would impact the customers in rural area where there is no stable internet connectivity. And apart from that, currently the banks which are giving this feature, they have a service fee for this transaction. For example, HDFC Bank, which is giving a daily limit of 10,000 per day and a monthly limit of 25,000 for withdrawal through this cashless card system, they are charging a service fee of 25 rupees per transaction. So that is too high if you compare to the current debit card transactions, wherein you will have minimum free transactions per month, and service charge would be charged only after you exceed the minimum level of transactions. So here every transaction there is a 25% charge, and currently we are not sure if the UPI based cash withdrawal system will also have similar restrictions and service fees. And the other problem with this initiative is the scalability problem. We don't know how many banks would go in for this mechanism. If RBI mandates every bank to go for that, all the ATMs to go for that, only then everyone will adopt it. Otherwise we are not sure, because for the banks and the ATM networks it is a cost. Giving this new feature, they'll have to revamp the software of all the ATM networks. So that is why we are not sure if the banks will be readily able to scale the process. When the vulnerability of the card is reduced because of the cash withdrawal without the card, the risk feature is transferred here from the card to the mobile from the UPI network. We have seen various scams taking place even in UPI, wherein vulnerable people are scammed by the criminals using the UPI network itself. For example, the best way people do that is they send a transaction with the receive amount request. Then the person would call you and say that you will get amount if you input the PIN. But because it was a payment receive request from their side, when you input the pin, amount would get deducted from your side. So people who are not well versed with technology, they would easily get cheated through such scams. And now we are just transferring the risk from the debit card to the UPI enabled mobile phones. And with this, what is the future of debit cards? Currently, people are used to debit cards and there are new uses for debit cards. For example, standing instructions for payment deduction every month, and EMI payments can be made through debit cards, and EMI loans are given based on the debit card transactions. So debit cards will continue even in the future. It will help those segments wherein people who are not purely comfortable with using the UPI technology, and if there are going to be some transaction limits on the cashless withdrawals through the UPI, and the limits would be higher for the debit card transactions. And there are various class of debit cards issued for the bank customers depending on your ability, depending on your credit worthiness. So the different benefits of debit card, different types of debit card, and different credit cards with various limits and additional benefits would be given by banks. So all this will not be able to be given under the UPI enabled method. So the debit cards will still continue in that instance. This article from the copyright and licenses, it is important for science and tech, so please go through the article. There can be a probable question in the prelims regarding the technical nature of copyrights and licensing softwares. In the business page, February's industrial output increases compared to the previous month. So the headlines is enough, we need not go through the details. US inflation increases to 40-year high. So here we need to see the reasons for the increase in inflation. The prices are driven up by the disruption in supply chains because of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, increase in consumer demand. So here you can see there are both supply chain and the demand side reasons. On one side, the supply is reduced. Because the reduction in supply, the price will increase. On the other side, there is increase in demand. Again, because of increase in demand, the price will increase. So this is double increase of price both from the supply side and the demand side. And other reason is the disruption of global food and energy markets because of the Russian-Ukraine conflict. So all these impacts have an impact on the inflation. That is why the US inflation has reached a 40-year high. WTO reduces the global trade growth outlook because of the war. That is obvious. Because of the war, everything is getting disrupted. So the growth of everybody will also get disrupted in a global economy where each economy is connected to the other economy. We need not go into the details of it. In yesterday's news, sir, we discussed about the spectrum pricing and how TRAI has reduced the spectrum prices. The coalition of telecom industries has said that the pricing is still high. If the telecom industry feel that the cellular operators feel that the pricing of spectrum is too high, they won't bid for the prices, and again the spectrum would be unutilized. So in an economy, having resources which are not utilized productively is a wastage of resources. So the government has to think again about the proper pricing so that it has to balance the profit of the government and the viability of prices for the telecom industry, because if they feel the prices are too high, they are not going to purchase and you're not getting any revenue at all. So even if you reduce the prices and even if they purchase at lesser price, you will get some revenue, which is much better than not getting any revenue at all. So this is a business decision for the government. Government completes national monetization plan deals worth 96,000 crores. Previously, the center had a target of 88,000 crores to be raised under the national monetization plan, wherein the public assets which are unutilized in the public sector undertakings would be monetized and leased to the private sector. So under that, now almost deals worth 96,000 crores are completed, which is beyond the targeted amount. We can skip this news. And here just the headlines is important. Coal shortage is likely to cause power cut, and also probably the tariffs also would increase in the future. These are the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.